Okay, thank you very much, Miranda, for that introduction. I'd like to introduce everybody to our panel of industry experts. We're going to start with Derek Sloan. Derek is the president of Simtech Dealer Services. Derek builds on the company's leading position in the Canadian market while strategically leveraging Aminta's capabilities across the warranty sector. Since joining Simtech in 2010, he has held numerous leadership roles and played a pivotal role in advancing the F&I performance solution for dealers, significantly contributing to the company's robust growth. As a seasoned professional with more than 30 years' experience, Derek's diverse career background includes cross-departmental sales and management roles at dealership level, serving as a general manager for a multi-dealership group, and partnering in an automotive dealership. Derek's wealth of experience and strategic vision continue to drive Simtech's success and industry leadership. Welcome, Derek. Next, we have Dan Park. Dan is CEO of Clutch, Canada's largest automotive online retailer. Clutch's fully vertically integrated platform offers high-quality pre-owned vehicles through its websites. Prior to joining Clutch, Dan was general manager and head of Uber Eats Canada. Welcome, Dan. Next, we've got Andrew Lemoine, CEO of Autocorp.ai. Born with an entrepreneurial spirit, Andrew excelled in sales from a young age. His passion for cars led him to a dealership career, rapidly advancing from detailer to salesperson and becoming a sales manager before the age of 19. By age 25, he had ascended to the role of general manager. Recognizing the automotive industry's need for disruption, he boldly left a stable career in retail to venture into technology. He launched Autocorp in 2021, a fintech company revolutionizing automotive credit and financing. Autocorp was ranked as the 4th fastest growing company in Ottawa and is currently one of the fastest growing auto tech companies in Canada. Guided by the belief that everyone can achieve their dream life, Andrew is a highly competitive leader focused on constant improvement. He believes in leading by example and fostering a winning company culture. A lifelong learner and passionate serial entrepreneur, Andrew enjoys connecting with others on the same path. And last but not least, we have Jonathan Tong, Director of Product at AutoTrader. Jonathan has over 15 years' experience in building and scaling online marketplaces, particularly in the Canadian automotive sector. In his role with AutoTrader, Jonathan oversees the marketplace product portfolio with the goal of driving innovation to enhance the Canadian car buying experience and aid dealer partners to attract high-intent sales opportunities that are primed to close. Welcome. Okay, so let's frame our conversation here, and let's start with something that Miranda brought up. What do we believe is the definition of digital retailing, and do we believe that that definition has evolved over the years? So we'll start with Derek.
Well, it figures you would start with me while I'm losing my voice. The timing is impeccable. For some people in this room, they're probably happy about it in some form or fashion, so it's okay. I'm just kidding. I think trying to define digital retail is not easy. It's a term that's used quite frequently, and we have these conversations as well. And it's very similar to even AI today. AI is used in a lot of conversations, but yet it's not necessarily truly understood. Digital retail is, by definition, is technically it's a process that a consumer goes through that is 100% through a digital medium of some form or fashion. Yet there are different versions of this, and I know probably Andrew you'll touch on like virtual as well, virtual digital or virtual retail as well. So I would say it's a I apologize everybody, the timing's terrible. But I would say it's a misunderstood. In fact, from a consumer perspective, you would probably never hear a consumer utter the term digital retail. To them, they wouldn't know the difference. From an industry perspective, we say it a lot. However, today, if you really look at anybody who is doing a process from beginning to end in a digital retail space, it's very fragmented. There are very few players that are doing digital retail from beginning to end. And because it's so fragmented, and because there is so much disruption coming to us, and will continue, I think it's the greatest opportunity to define what truly digital retail will be.
Great. Dan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, for me, we obviously have a digital platform, or at least a digital-first platform. And so it really comes down to the extent to which consumers can interact with the experience online. At the end of the day, the product we sell is cars, and so it's never going to be digitized, at least I don't think in my lifetime. Cars are physical assets that need to be transported, and so there's always going to be some kind of physical interaction with the consumer, whether to deliver the vehicle or to pick up the vehicle. And so for me, it's really the extent to which you can automate a lot of the processes that are done by humans within the sales funnel. It's not like movies and Netflix where you can now deliver the entire product digitally. We're never going to be able to do that. But there are parts of that process that certainly can be moved into the future and take advantage of a lot of the technology tools that are available today.
Andrew?
I don't know where you got that bio, but I'd like a copy of that. It's the best bio I've ever had, so that was good. Yeah, like Miranda said, consumers don't know what digital retailing is. A lot of dealers don't know. Like, we as an industry still don't really know what digital retailing is, and we're defining it every single day. We believe right now that the industry's more in a virtual retail place where you have human interaction is just needed for the most part. There's somebody in the dealership and there's a consumer, and there needs to be human interaction using technology to facilitate the sale, the transaction. So we do not see a lot of dealers. We personally, our company, we work with over 700 dealers in Canada, and we don't see dealers selling cars 100% online in a 100% digital process. So we see them using technology. We've definitely seen geo expanding. Like, it used to be very personal. You used to sell to your community, to your backyard, where now it's not uncommon for Toronto dealers to sell into Ottawa. It's not uncommon for BC dealers to sell into Alberta. We're seeing a lot more geo expansion, and to do that, you need technology. So we really have a focus on virtual retail.
Great. And Jonathan?
Yeah, so 5 years ago or plus, I think we all got really excited with digital retail. We thought, okay, the consumer's going to be able to take a car, they're going to just add their trade-in, and then they're going to convert right there, and the car's just going to drop in front of them. And we actually tried something like that. And what we found was that for nearly the majority of Canadians, they struggled to get through the entire process in a digital way. And so we started to rethink, what does that mean for consumers? And we know 82% of consumers want to do, for instance, their trade or their finance online before they get to the dealership. But they didn't necessarily want to do it in that strict flow. So what we started to see was it was more flexible. It was going to be what the consumer wanted to do. And it would be earlier in the research phases. So 68% of consumers on the marketplace are spending their time researching, and it's only 32% of the time they actually found a vehicle and they're comparing and they're transacting. And so consumers can now go and they can do these tools earlier on and have them seam together when they do finally find that vehicle. Everything is plug and play. It continues to be a persistent, consistent journey for a singular consumer. So we see it as more consumer-centric versus transaction-centric when we first started in the digital process.
Great, thank you all. What do we think is the largest obstacle that's still in the digital process, and looking at something maybe like lender criteria? So this is for, we'll start with Andrew.
Well, I think that the sale entirely is typically a complex sale. Like that, the only sale that works with 100% digital retailing is what we call the perfect sale. It's a client who has perfect credit, who has probably no trade, and is ideally paying cash. And if that is the customer and that's the criteria, well then, okay, that would work. That's not what dealers see. That's not how most cars are sold today. So there's complexity. There's trade-ins. There's negative equity. There's a lot more of it today. We're seeing a lot more of it. There's co-signers. There's credit challenges. So that's the reality in the complexity of selling a car is it's a complex sale. So for sure is the financing, okay? The part that's really holding us back from propelling into more e-commerce is the financing element of that sale, because right now it's currently where we hit a dead end, right? So they can build a car, we can add it to cart, we can compare prices, we can get a trade evaluation. But when it comes to actually financing, you're kind of hitting dead ends at forms. A customer can fill out a credit app, and then they really got to wait. So we're starting to see a little bit more technology come to the market, some pre-qualification tools where consumers are able to gauge affordability. Got to be careful there too, because we see 50 to 60% of consumers put incorrect information in their form up front. So imagine a world where we're using affordability technology, telling a consumer that they don't qualify for a car that they do. So it's got to be done very, very carefully, but that's definitely where it's heading.
Derek?
Yeah. I apologize. I'm hoping the tea and the honey is going to help. I agree with what Andrew's saying. I'm going to go back to my point, though, about misalignment a little bit. There are too many companies, institutions, finance companies, that are all doing their own thing. There will have to be more alignment as to all of these different fragmented technologies or companies to come together to help dealers, OEMs. And everybody wants to own the customer's experience, and that's always what it's about. And financing, it plays a significant part in that. But we have to also speak frankly about it. How many of us do full retailing online today? We all do. It's not the same product. It's more complex, a car deal. But how possible is it to do a full car deal from beginning to end, delivery, funding, everything online? Very possible. So I believe that at some point in time, very soon, all the fragmented pieces of what everybody is doing will have to align. An example just on our side. We are approached endlessly to participate in integration, to be part of another technology platform or an overall alignment of a customer journey. And it's endless. So at some point in time, there has to become almost like the mainstay of how that works. We're not there yet. And that's why consumers are, it's not that they're even confused. They don't know what they don't know. They don't even know what's available at this point. So I say that's the biggest challenge. We have to figure out how to align that better, bring it all together, and then make it easier just really for everybody.
So that's great. I mean, talking about the human touch. Do we believe that the human component is still necessary for digital retailing? And at SiriusXM, we conduct quite a bit of research around this, and we've seen, especially with Gen Z and millennials, that 75% of prospective buyers are looking for a greater human element, and some of that is because they're inundated with chatbots and so on and so forth. But looking at it that way, what role do you think the human element plays in digital retailing? I'll go to Dan.
Yeah, I think it plays a big part, and it will for a long time. I would disagree that you can't do a full transaction digitally. That's not that hard, right? I mean, you said it. That technology exists. We've done that. Get thousands of customers that come in, buy a car, get cash, and it is able to do that whole transaction. We drop it in their driveway. That's not a problem. I see a few bank logos right in front of me, and so this is I got excited about this panel because I can use it as a forum to beg to all the financial institutions to be like, look, it's really more about the lending process that we talked about, and the fact that a lot of the banks still require ink on paper signature. Really, the digital signature is actually more secure. And so the feedback I get so many times from a lot, and it took me, one of the large banks took almost a year because they weren't comfortable with the digital process. They are now, but it took a lot of time because they just inherently thought it was less secure. The reality is it's actually more secure. And so I think the biggest hurdle is, one, what Derek mentioned, is around the consistency and what we need to be able to provide, as retailers of vehicles to the lenders to be able to get all the information in a way that's, probably more streamlined and a little bit more structured. And then secondly, some of the criteria around security and making sure that fraud and KYC and all those processes are satisfied, so that we can actually deliver the full end-to-end experience, because that's where everything stops, is around that lender experience.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about data security in a few minutes. So, Jonathan, thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned that for majority of Canadians, they had to reach out to the dealership, and they do need human help. And so building the technology around that makes a lot of sense. They're looking for things, for instance, like they want to take a test drive, or they want to better understand their financing. They have questions about that. They want to see the condition of the vehicle, or maybe they need a little incentive to actually convert. I think what's almost more important, though, is what they don't want. If they're completing activities online, they want that to be a cohesive journey for them. And for dealers, they often will go to their CRM, they see the lead, and they say, okay, I'm going to call that number right there, because that's the path of least resistance. Well, you can imagine what that's like for the consumer, right? They've done all these activities online. They spent all this time on their journey, and all of a sudden they're arriving at the dealership, or even being called from the dealership, and they're not mentioning anything that they've done so far. It's a disjointed process at this point, and you're going to lose the consumer's trust. So it's really important that you take a look, if you're at a dealership, and take a look at exactly what has been provided by that consumer. They spent quite a bit of time, and start to engage, acknowledge it. And that does mean some of the tools that we build for dealers has to be an easy human interface, so that they can actually read that information quickly and then act on it with the consumer. And that process is really important.
That's great. So, looking at digital retailing, do we believe that digital retailing has streamlined the negotiation process, really looking at fair pricing and identifying hidden costs? I'll go to Andrew.
I mean, streamline the education for sure. Consumers are more educated than they ever have been. We know that. I'll just take an opportunity when I'm in the room with all the indirect lenders to say, and to what Derek was just saying, is there needs to be more consolidation and approach to tech. So what's difficult is all these technologies exist. Okay, they all exist, and we could actually build it all today. What we can't do is build everything into one. So what we're seeing is one lender might use a certain open banking technology, and then another lender uses another one, and another lender uses another one. So what we do at our company at Autocorp is we really take a lot of the lender requirements, and we build them and put them more upstream. So we believe that we can get consumers and customers to actually verify their ID at the beginning of the buying journey. We believe that we can put a lot of the finance to pre-qualification at the beginning of the purchase. Where we hit a wall is with the indirect lenders in the room, where maybe one uses Plaid, or the other uses Flinks, or the other uses Decision Logics. And this makes it difficult to actually build a platform that all the lenders will accept and will use. So it would be great to see some consolidation and a consolidative approach from the indirect lenders, because at the end of the day, we all have to kind of do this together to digitize the finance and lending aspect of the Canadian auto industry.
If you don't mind me touching on that, Andrew, too, it also gives us a great opportunity. I'm going to try using my deep voice here for a second, if I have one. It gives us an opportunity to find almost like a universal approach that everybody could tap into. Okay, so something that can be, once it's established, then it could be duplicated and then grown. And going back to the question, I believe more transparency. Well, we see it today. More control, more transparency in the hands of the consumer will dictate prices, will dictate whether or not they feel they're getting a fair deal. I mean, there are so many tools, auto trade, there's so many tools out there that will show if you're getting a fair deal or if you're buying it at the right price. So I think that part is easy. And I think the more digital retailing evolves, the more the consumer is just going to know exactly everything about the transaction, which will also elevate the trust level and the control level. It's as simple as that. Anything transactional, if it's in the hands of the consumer and it's through a medium that walks them through a very solid process, it's going to build trust and then confidence, and then they'll use it more. How many of you ever thought you'd be buying as much on Amazon as you do today? And I know you knew Amazon was going to get mentioned at some point in time in this meeting, right? But how many of you use it now, you don't even think about it, right? Well, that took years. But again, it's that level of trust and everything coming back to some universal format that everybody can have confidence in.
That's great. So let's switch gears and let's talk about the progress that we've made in this space. So I want the full panel to answer this, and we'll start with Jonathan and give Derek a break to get his voice back. How have you leveraged business units to work together to bring a frictionless car buying journey? So we'll start with Jonathan.
Yeah, so Auto Trader, we have the marketplace, but Trader as a greater company has a very booming, growing software business. So we have ActiveX, which is a popular CRM. We have Easy Deal desking tool. We have MotoCommerce, which does e-commerce on both the marketplace, on dealer websites, and even on OEM websites as well. And then we have DealerTrack as well. And so some of these have been through acquisitions as well, right? So for us, it's actually, first steps was how are we going to be better together? How are we going to bring the people between all these companies together to work together collaboratively? And then once we were successful with that, we were starting to work really closely together and building that rapport and that culture. It was really around how the products would serve the customer and how we would build that cohesive car shopping buying journey. And we now have the capability to actually do some of the things that we wanted to do. And so for that is bringing the marketplace, bringing it early on, and then bringing it through the e-commerce tools. Everything that you do early on comes into the e-commerce tool. So if you do your trade-in, you get it in your when you're building your deal. And then when you're going through that, it's all showing up nicely in the CRM in the best way possible. It's really engaging. You're also able to go back and forth with the consumer, back to the marketplace or back to their email with an offer that they can go to MotoCommerce with and they can play around with. And then when it finally arrives into DealerTrack, for instance, if they completed pre-qualification, they can go and they can see that in DealerTrack. And so it's really about making it a cohesive car shopping journey, and to do that, though, it was really started with the people.
Andrew?
One thing that you said is, if you think about what we did with the car sales process, everybody's always harped on the in-store car sales process, the 10, the 12, the 15, the 22 step. But what we did for a little bit is we took an in-store process that was broken and we digitized it. And so we started to force a customer through a broken physical process online. And so what we're seeing is it's very, very important to give consumers their point of entry. Where do they want to start to sell? We don't need to force them through step 1, 2, and 3 if they want to start interaction at step 4. So, and you were being very humble, by the way, when they own the whole industry, if you don't know, the Trader. And so, yeah, so it would be great if everybody can work together, not just the companies the Trader owns. We'd like to work with the companies the Trader owns too. And it's very important to bring everything together. You hear in-store and you hear online, okay? And there's got to be this cohesive transfer. It's really got to be all connected. All these fragmented pieces need to be connected. And there's nothing worse than a consumer starting a journey online, walking in, and it's like, what's your name? Sorry, what were you looking at? I don't have you here in my CRM. CRM isn't connected to the digital retail platform or whatever. So we really just got to bring them all together. And at the end of the day, like the talk earlier, it really boils down to consumer experience. It's all about the experience, and that's how we're going to do it. Is we're going to bring and consolidate all the tools. And it's not going to be one platform, but all the platforms need to be able to speak to each other. So we're seeing a lot more open APIs. We're seeing a lot more, SDKs. This is good because this will allow all the different platforms to start to communicate to, at the end of the day, deliver a world-class experience to the customer.
Great. Dan?
I didn't know about this 15-step process. But anyway, I guess there is one. For us, I think a lot of people think about this whole concept of online digital retail as a website, and I think that's such a small fraction of the consumer experience. Sure, that's where it starts, but Amazon, Amazon, you brought it up, but Amazon isn't just a website. It's a whole series of technology and process behind being able to deliver that package from the moment you click the button to later that afternoon. It's the logistics, it's everything that goes behind that. And I think when you kind of the original question about how much progress we've made, when I was first, embarking on Clutch back in 2019, the concept of anyone buying a car online was insane, like literally insane. Like they were like, "You're an idiot. Why would you ever do this?" It makes absolutely no sense. Today I think consumers evolved. Pandemic obviously accelerated that. But we got a review on one of our cars, And the only reason I know even what it means is because I got a 10-year-old, it said skibbity full riz. And I was like, okay, that was literally the review of their experience. And like, so the consumer's evolving because they're, the people that were, 25 years ago are now 25. I can do math. And so the consumer's continuing to evolve. And so the way we think about it is like, how do we meet the consumer and how do we build in processes and workflow that allow the consumer to consume the product they want to at their own time, at their own leisure. So that's how, I think the progress, to your question, I think a lot of progress has been made, but I think that's been because the consumer's been driving it and because the younger generation is now, 5 years later, are looking to buy cars and building families and so on and so forth.
Great. Derek?
Yeah, it's getting worse. Maybe I should stop drinking. Are we serving whiskey yet? No? Okay. I apologize. Okay. What's interesting? I was very fortunate to be part of a group that was selling cars online in 1999, and like fully online. And when I say selling them online, I'm not talking. It's more of a virtual retail. The reason I'm bringing that up, and we had a 7-day money-back guarantee. We could deliver it to your door, and it was very progressive for its day. And it was not just a website. But the reason I bring that up is we've always had the technology and the know-how to make this work. And I think it's 12 steps. It's not 14, I think it's 12, if I'm not mistaken. But that's the problem too, though. You have to start with a fresh sheet of paper sometime, and you have to put yourself in a situation where you have to focus more on how customers want to buy and not on how you want to sell. And the car dealers, I used to be one, car dealers are notorious sometimes. We love them, don't get me wrong, I love car dealers. They're the entrepreneurs that make everything run. But sometimes it's about how I want to sell, right? I just heard recently, it wasn't long ago, I heard a story recently where someone is still not letting a worksheet with prices on it leave the store. And I'm like, where are we at? Honestly, it's gonna be 2025 in 2 months. And you're not letting a worksheet leave the store with numbers on it. I get it. You have to figure out how you're gonna be competitive, and it can't just be a number on a sheet that's leaving the store, right? So seamless process is gonna come where we do have the ability for people to be able to talk to each other and connect together. I think it was also mentioned that TD has wheels. I've seen TD wheels as well, and it's a great start of an element, but it's not the full picture. And then of course Clutch, you still have the connectivity of the human component, but we're still not at that point. If you're a consumer, would you not be confused as hell right now? You wouldn't even know where to go. So what ends up happening is you have to rely on yourself, referrals, reviews, and that's where you have to start the whole process, right? So I think as soon as we can get to that, people connecting better, and then more of a seamless, everybody speaking to each other, I think we're moving in a better direction. But I think that's our opportunity too.
Excellent, thanks. So we touched on this a little bit earlier, but let's dig into data security. So, what are the guardrails that are currently in place in digital retailing platforms to verify the authenticity of documents and information provided by customers during the process? And one of the reasons I bring this up is I just purchased and sold a home. I did it all on my phone. There was no wet signature required anywhere. So let's start with Dan.
Yeah, so there's obviously, we do ID verification. We use a company called Persona. There's a lot of that can happen digitally. For us, we also double check it with a manual process with humans. I mean, we've made it into like a wizard-like flow where people have to check IDs. So that all happens. So I think there's certainly a subset of tools or a set of tools that allow you to make that easier. But I think, obviously, given what's at stake, having a manual process in addition to that, this is where I think there's that combination of human and digital process that needs to come into play. So we do both. But, kind of to your point around, signatures, like that's one area that I think, there's a lot of financial institutions that require wet on ink on paper signature, which, to me, there's so many things that we do in our daily lives, like including buying homes, that can be done digitally. And so that seems like a little bit of a necessary requirement, but I think these are also burdened by some of the legacy processes that some of the lenders have. But for us, we encrypt all our data. It's all stored in CRMs within our ecosystem. So there's nothing there that I think is out of the ordinary nor like concerning, and so I think that's where this is where we, again, to your point, we need to work together with lenders to make sure that they have the level of comfort around the security and data security that needs to happen to sell a vehicle.
Andrew, what are your thoughts?
It's safer. Like Dan was just saying, it's stored in a digital encrypted environment that's SOC 2 compliant. And I take IDs, we'll use ID for example. As an industry, we have been so non-compliant, okay, for the storage of driver's license. If you walk in any dealership right now, we could leave here and go to the closest store. You walk in, we'll walk into the sales manager's office, or we'll go to the reception counter, you're gonna see photocopied IDs everywhere. Tic-tac-toe, notes, grocery lists on a customer's ID. That's the way that they're still taking them today in 2024, and that's the way that they're storing them. KYC is being relied heavily just on that face-to-face interaction at delivery. We're putting all the onus on the finance manager, who's technically a representative of the lender in that moment in time. So again, it's actually safer to digitize the KYC component. E-signatures are more secure. We have IP stamps, we have secure storage, right? But again, it's gonna take the industry to all get behind it and consolidate, because if one lender accepts DocuSign but the other only accepts PandaDoc, it makes it very difficult, again, to build these platforms. So you had said that at Clutch, you guys use Persona?
Yep.
So we have an ID tool, and we built it on the infrastructure of Persona as well, and then we've connected more APIs so it does more out of the box. But again, now the question is, Mike, how many lenders will accept our ID? And that's really what it boils down to, because if we're going to have the consumer go through the steps, they're going to verify themselves, the dealer's going to have a copy of it, all digitally done, and they're going to send it in for funding. And what if the dealer says, or the lender says, well, we don't accept AVA ID, right? We just want the photocopy. And so we just need to see a little bit more. But we have came a very long way, and I will say this, there's been a change in temperature and approach from the lenders, from the indirect lenders. So we've seen that. It's been, I'd say in the last 12 to 18 months, all the lenders are pushing towards innovation and digitization. So it's really exciting.
Yeah, it's good to see that we're making strides there.
Absolutely.
So Jonathan, on Trader's side, what guardrails have you put in place for these processes?
Yeah, so we have, for instance, some finance tools online, and we require the users to sign in so we can validate their email. And if we do knowledge-based questions that we get back from Equifax, and we attach that to the email, and that goes to the dealer. We can then say it's been identity verified, but it still relies heavily on KYC, as you mentioned. There's also just even the security of how we're transmitting information in between our systems and our partners, and making sure we have direct integration. So you can't just send, as you mentioned, you can't be sending your driver's license and things like that through email anymore. So we need to have direct integrations when it's sensitive financial information, and we're really pushing ourselves towards in that direction.
Great. So we're going to stick with you, Jonathan, here for the next question. Has the digital retail experience led to a breakdown of consumer aversion when it comes to purchasing in this medium?
Yes, absolutely, because the consumers now don't even know they're doing digital retail. As Derek mentioned, like they're doing certain tools and figuring out what they can afford earlier on in the process, and then it's all coming together. And when they get to the dealership, they're being engaged in ways that bring them back online. If they leave the dealership, they're getting engaged, they're coming back. And so it's a cohesive process that has really great interface in between the technology and the humans that are on it. And so for a consumer, they don't know that they're doing that. And the interest level is 82% are looking to do these things online. So they are doing them, and so you need to be there and to meet them where the consumer is.
That's great. And Dan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, that's our whole premise. And so we try to get consumers at the beginning of the journey. Sometimes they start on AutoTrader, but eventually they end up at Clutch, hopefully to purchase a vehicle. But we want to engage them early so that they go through our process to fill out the pre-qualification, to browse the vehicle, to then ultimately purchase. And so our whole philosophy is to get consumers as early as possible and then educate them around the journey.
Great. So this next one's for Derek. How can we build a flow where lenders can see conversions starting as early as the consumer research phases on the marketplace?
Yeah, it's so it's all about it's all.
I'm trying to keep the questions to a minimum.
I'm going to push it out. I think it's all about the beginning of the journey for them. So again, when you look at most consumers and when they start the process and they start asking friends about what car they bought, or they start looking at their vehicle in the driveway and they know they need to get a new one. And then that whole start researching and going online, right? And then referrals and everything. That's where you have to get involved. That's where the engagement has to begin. And I think based on some of the statistics we saw today, based on the economy, and also some of the risk that's coming in our debt load for consumers, they need these tools. They need to have the ability to go and scope where they stand and where they are, what options they have available to them, and what are the best options. So I would tell you that digital, what's nice about digital too is if you get a really good process and you put it on a digital platform, and when I say that, I mean from the customer's perspective, not necessarily from ours, they're going to follow it. That's what's great about it. They have no choice. In order for them to execute the transaction, they have to follow it. So that whole element will actually, I believe, elevate their engagement as soon as you get them involved earlier. I'm a big fan of pre-approvals. I'm a big fan of consumers figuring out where they stand, and then having different scenarios to play with, because that's what they want. They want it in their hands. And then they want to compare. And it may not be this car, maybe that one. They want to compare all the cars to each other. And then they want to compare the financing, right? And they want to have options to this. They're pretty smart. And the new generation, forget it. That's even crazier. Everything's got to be done on that mobile phone. So I think we go back to it. It's just, we're at a turnstile here a little bit, a huge opportunity to figure out what that new process looks like. And I will tell you, the consumer's going to control it. However, they're going to use the technology that we're all building that will allow them to go through that journey.
Andrew?
There's been a lot of talk about affordability today and a focus on affordability. For dealers in the room, one thing that we know is that affordability really boils down to at what time in that purchase was the affordability question brought up. And so if we're having the affordability conversation at the end of the transaction in a finance office, a lot of the times it's too late. But if we were able to interject that way, way earlier on when they started online, it gives the dealer the opportunity to set that customer up for the right vehicle, the right asset, the right loan with the right lender. And you're going to see far, far more success in conversion. So we had 23,000 Canadians start their purchase journey with our software last month, and 24% of them converted to a purchase within 30 days of that, which is pretty remarkable. We thought so anyways. I was very, very surprised that the conversion was actually that high. Yeah,
those are really impressive numbers.
So at the risk of
Dan?
stating the obvious, and I think this is like partly sharing of some of the special sauce that online folks have, and as an advantage to kind of the traditional brick and mortar experience, is that you can actually measure every single step of this, like the process we were talking. We're like, okay, what's the conversion rate on this step to this step? And then you change something and you're like, okay, well, it's a little bit higher, so that seems better.
Yeah.
And you can change every part of that process, and if you can keep that entire customer online to purchase, you know where the drop-off points are, and you can actually measure those things. It's really, really hard to measure how people act and behave inside a store. And so that's, I think, like part of the special sauce and some of the secret that we're able to unlock around the digital experience is through being able to...
That's why your experience on Netflix today is not the same experience you had 10 years ago on Netflix.
Right.
You know, it's completely different.
Right. Or even like, all of these technology platforms, right, where you are able to measure exactly, if you surface this to the consumer in this way, and you should know, I mean, you obviously know this as well, you can measure the exact conversion and A/B test everything to the point of like full optimization so you can result in the best conversion rate possible.
Yeah. Okay, so let's look to the future. And what do we see the challenges for digital retailing in the near future? Let's call it 1 to 2 years out. We'll start with Jonathan.
Yeah, I'd say it is that interface between humans and digital. It's making that dealers will often want to own the entire process when it gets to them, right? And so for them, I think there's a level of training and a level of building processes internally that we kind of talked about, where they can engage properly with those digital retail tools. But those tools themselves need to be cohesive. They need to bring together and they need to interface well. So it's a matter of also taking the information that the consumer's already they've already put into this digital retail process and engaging with it. So they're actually looking at that information, and that means on the systems that we have in place to actually make them better interfaces, to make them work all together. None of the desk swiveling, none of the signing in and out, making it really easy for the consumer or for the dealer to work with.
Andrew?
You said something very important, which is making it very easy for the dealer to work with as well. We tend to put a lot of focus on the UI and the user interface for the consumer, but if it's a poor interface and experience for the dealer, it's going to fall apart on the back end. So we have a very, very high focus on mastering that UI for the dealer as well, because ultimately the dealer, which is the back end of the transaction, and the consumer is the front end of the transaction, they have a very poor experience on the back end right now. So, and just making it a very nice and simple experience for both parties.
Dan?
I mean, the future I envision is that everyone buys a car and clutch. But I mean, the reality is that I think there's going to be a subset of folks that want to have an experience that is digital. Others will want to continue to go in store. And so, again, it's going to be about meeting the customer. Look, like, we buy a lot of stuff on Amazon, but I also sometimes walk into a Walmart and shop in person. And so I think it really is about serving the customer and giving them options around both in person and digital, and making it as easy as possible, because I think that's the one thing that I think is certainly in the future for everyone. People just want an easy, seamless transaction with everything that they interact with on a daily basis. And the more we can take complications out of that process and out of that experience, the better. And so that's where I think we're heading. But I certainly think it's a world where consumers will we need to meet consumers where they want to be.
Absolutely. And Derek?
Yeah, I think I never start off well.
I envision a future where you have a better voice.
I agree with Jonathan as well. I agree with the panel, of course, but Jonathan, you said something that's very important. Cars are emotional, and I don't think that'll ever stop. I don't think so. And I think cars are something that people want to see and touch and feel and sit in and smell and look at, and it can still be that thing. So it is a different transaction. So I think the human element is always going to play a considerable part. In fact, I got a hokey saying. I got lots of hokey sayings, Mike. I won't tell you. I won't share them. But one of them is the most important part of any process is the person, and I still believe that. So I think we have such a great opportunity to bring all of this technology, all of these great things that we're doing, and to keep that human element in there, but have and you said it, Andrew, as well, it's when you make it easy for the dealer to use the technology, combined to the consumer to have an ease of use of the technology, and you bring all that together, and then you have people involved. Now all of a sudden, it's a transaction that's seamless. It's great, they got all fully transparent, and it takes care of so many of the challenges and issues that we face today in the automotive industry. And I think we're really on the cusp of something pretty significant happening.
Great. So we've got about 2 minutes left. So I'm going to toss out a bonus question. Whoever wants to answer it, feel free. Maybe Derek can take some time off and rest his voice. So we're seeing platforms like Netflix and Amazon Prime integrating shopping features or allowing product placements with their content. What opportunities do you see for digital retailers to leverage these streaming platforms as part of their sales funnel?
So platforms like Netflix and Amazon?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's just attention, right? Wherever the consumer attention is where you want to be. So obviously a lot of the attention is shifting to those platforms, so it would make a ton of sense to.
Anyone else?
Are we talking about an advertisement or to start the purchase?
Yeah, more along the lines of advertisement, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's that's a major channel. On-demand TV is a pretty important channel, particularly as linear becomes somewhat less relevant.
I would challenge whether the conversion on every single tool. There's a lot of great tools, and I think from AutoTrader's perspective, we do innovate, we do play with these tools. But what we've seen with some is that the conversion rates through some of the mechanisms that we have, where it's end-to-end, is just significantly higher. You're going to, there's always moving budget around to this or that, like Netflix, but we do find that they come back because we actually convert to sale. And so it's just something to consider when you're playing around with Netflix or Prime. Is that going? How much is that? What is the ROI on that? So that's where I would challenge that. Yeah. Great,
thank you guys. So we're at time now. I want to thank our panel. They had some fantastic conversation, and it was very insightful. So can we please give our panelists a warm round of applause?
Thanks, Mike.
Better leads, less fraud, more deals. Autocorp.ai.